You're listening to a podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants with hosts Willie Dills, Chad King, and Ben Lee.
Let's go Giants! SF Giants! Let's go Giants! SF Giants!
Dedicated to the greatest team in Major League Baseball history, the San Francisco Giants, this is Torture Cast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Torture Cast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. My name is Ben Lee, and we are here for it's going to be a very strange episode. We are without our spiritual guide, our totem animal, if you will, Johnny Velvet, star outfielder. Willie is taking care of some stuff at work today. So with us, of course, we have the unstoppable Chad King.
Yeah, I moved about three 26-foot U-Haul trucks today, and I'm still podcasting over 3G.
That's pretty unstoppable, I think. I'm impressed. I remember the last time that I had to move, I didn't have a U-Haul, and I think I popped a muscle in my left arm. I couldn't. I was one-armed for 3 days. It was pretty embarrassing.
I don't really have a back. I don't really have a back right now, so we'll see.
All right, and with us to fill the gaping hole that Willie leaves somehow, we have our first and or second ever. We were debating about this before the show, actually, because Chad, you were kind of our first ever guest, but now you're official. So it feels like now you've set a standard. Anybody we bring on as a guest is eventually going to become a host of the show. But
no pressure.
No pressure at all. That is Erin that you hear. A good friend of ours who's going to be coming on and talking some Giants with us today, because it is, in fact, the end of the void. The offseason is over. We've got some pitchers and catchers reporting in sunny Arizona, and thanks to some frantic tweeting out of Scottsdale today, we can safely say baseball is back, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank God.
It's about time, I'll tell you. I could only pretend to be interested in football for so long, I feel like.
Football is what I do to fill the void between baseball seasons, and it doesn't really feel very authentic to me. I mean, it could be worse. It could be a lot worse, but I'm really, really happy that baseball's back.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think we were kind of hoping that there would be this Giants-esque, wild card, almost nobody's jumping out of nowhere, and with the Niners this year, and so when that fell through, all of a sudden I was like, so how long until pitchers and catchers report? And I'm pretty sure everybody else who was on Twitter had the same question, because that answer came up 20 times in the hour after the Niners lost.
It's what
I'm ready to move on for sure.
And we've got a lot going on. I mean, we can already say one of the big events today was the return of one Gerald Buster Posey. Buster was actually catching 2 bullpen sessions today. He was working with a bunch of the different pitchers. One of the most encouraging things, actually, is Lincecum actually said it's like having the old Posey back. So, it's nice to hear that he's been working in the offseason. He's still got plenty of zip. And it's nice to hear that so far there don't seem to be any lasting effects of his injury. So it's always promising.
So what you're saying is Lincecum wants some more Posey.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Well, we have a clean tag. No, that's a good segue. I just wanted to say I really do like our new intro. We got, obviously, Willie asked Ashkan, and oh my gosh,
Bailey.
I'm blanking on
Ashkan
Bailey. How can I forget that? I like that drink. About to use the song for the intro. So, yeah, I really like that. It gets me a little pumped up when I listen to it. So, good job.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool. I remember hearing that song come out during the right after we won the series, kind of I guess beginning of next year, and I was all stoked for what else Ashkan and Bailey were going to come out with, and then the next major track from Bailey is a track about the Niners. I was like, all right, so one per year. If they're all this good, I'm okay with that.
It's enough to get you through to the next year.
Right. It's, it was that good of a song. I, just leave it on my shuffle and listen to it during the off season every time I miss the Giants.
So constantly?
I mean, I may or may not have it on loop as I go to sleep at night, Seriously, though, to Ashcon and Bailey, neither of you are probably listening to this, but if you are, you guys are awesome, and thank you for letting us use that song. It's made for a really awesome opening track. And I think I went back and I listened to the beginning of the podcast like 5 times after we posted it, just being like, this is so cool.
Yeah, who wants to listen to us? We just, right when it gets to that 30 seconds, I just stop. I don't even listen to us after that.
You listen to the intro and then you go back to the beginning so you can listen to the intro again. Because that's the best part. That's the best part of the whole podcast. Yeah.
Wait, there's something after the intro?
Well, that's sometimes. It's like a footnote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no big.
Got it.
All right, so still talking Posey. Posey, so he was doing plenty of catching today, so that definitely helps allay some of the fears of people who are saying, oh well, we're figuring he's going to switch to first base after the injury. Posey really wants to catch. He's determined to keep catching, which is good because I definitely think he's proven to be good at it. Bruce Bochy actually said today that he wasn't going to make a decision regarding any position changes yet, but he was going to be the one to do it if it happened. He was going to take that out of Buster's hands so that Buster didn't have to feel the pressure of people being like, well, where do you want to play? Are you going to be at first? Are you going to be at catcher? Posey's going to play wherever he gets told to play, and right now that's catcher, exactly where he wants. So that's good to hear. We don't have to, there's still the possibility of him doing first base on his off days, which I really want to hear what Aubrey Huff says about that this year, about Buster Posey's off day at first base. But it's nice to hear catching still seems to be on the table for him, because I really think the leadership he's brought to that position has really made him a real strong point there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that one of the biggest things that you get out of pitchers is you see a difference in the way that a pitcher pitches if they trust the person that they have behind the plate. Mm-hmm. And when you have Posey back there, Lincecum pitches better.
Can't argue. And I mean, it's nice because, you consider that Lincecum, as Willie's brought up before, Lincecum does not hold the running game really well. And so it's having somebody like Posey who's got a lot of zip on his throws and who can really keep an eye on and call the game well. Yeah, that when you couple that with a lot of trust and a lot of confidence, it's something that really can boost Timmy's presence on the mound. Although I still really wish that he would just develop a really good pickoff throw, but I'll take what I can get, I guess.
Yeah, we've talked about it before, but the drop off from Posey to the other catchers, no matter who it is so significant. He really does need to be there in order to make the Giants better, if he can physically. You put him at first base, and yeah, he's offensively better than Huff and Belt at this point, but compared to other first basemen, he's actually inferior as far, or maybe league average or something around there. So it really does bolster the Giants offense more if he stays at the catcher position. I'm just, and everybody is concerned about his endurance and how this injury is going to maybe wear on him from day to day. I mean, it's quite possible he could have the best rehab and the best healing possible that you could even think of, but squatting there every day for 5 or 6 days a week over the long duration of the season, it could add up. It's just going to be interesting to see. Even if spring training is okay on his ankle and his leg, it could be well into July when those effects start showing up. But hopefully he's good for a good 120 games or so catching. That's what I'm hoping.
And they gave him a nice long rehab period too. What I think the best call that the Giants made was not trying to force him back any earlier. Because I mean, he got hurt early enough last season that he's had a good 9 months to rehab his ankle. So
if you're going to get hurt, kids, get hurt early.
Get hurt in May.
Get hurt in May so you can play next season.
Right, so you're not coming back in the middle of the season, and then you don't know anybody, and everybody's like, dude, you missed out on all the inside jokes, and then you get back in, and it's just, oh man, I imagine though that with Posey though, one of the nice things is a lot of people were worried about zip on his throws, about how his conditioning is held up, because he has been doing physical therapy and then he's gotten back to working out normally. What was promising is both Hank Schillman and I believe Andrew Baggerly both tweeted today that he actually was taking catches from a pitching machine so he could work on zipping his throws to, I want to say, to second base, and it didn't look like he'd lost anything. So that's really promising because his defensive game was also a pretty big part of his game as catcher. So I mean, I would say that I was probably almost more worried about his throwing to second because he has to plant that drive leg, as I was about him being able to hit or run.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited. Like, I've been looking at pictures all day of spring training, and there are all these like really stoic looking pictures of Posey walking onto the field, and they've put these like soft filters around the edges, and they're just these very fantasized, like the color is all oversaturated, and I just have
opening night, he needs to hit home run into the light standards and have lightning and sparks shower him, and that will be complete. And
then he can have it catch with
make the
Kevin
season.
Costner. It'll be beautiful.
I'm
just so excited.
I imagine he comes around the bases and steps on home, and somebody throws him a guitar, and he just starts playing this totally rockin' solo, just like right there on home plate, just like, and it's maybe that's just me hoping. I don't know. All right, so it is fair to point out, though, there was also a lot of talk to Posey afterwards. Naturally, you can't have something as big as Posey coming back into camp without having a media session with Posey at it later. People did ask Posey whether or not, different things about position changes. Somebody actually asked him whether or not he'd want to be an outfielder. Posey's response was I'm too slow. And then he followed that up with, well, I guess Burrell did it. So...
So sad and true.
Is anybody else still kind of disappointed that we're not going to get any really good like Pat Burrell stories out of spring training this year? Because I don't know. I feel like without Pat around, Aubrey Huff just isn't going to get up to as much mischief. Maybe that's. No. I just have this feeling.
Yeah, I was hoping he was going to sign on for one more year just to see what was going to happen from the social and Twitter and underground point of view. But I actually did hear some stories about Aubrey Huff. Obviously he's back in his whole Pilates thing, but I guess he wasn't really a good influence on Huff the last couple of years. So maybe
how you
Burrell,
figure that?
Yeah, I don't know. I would like to be on a fly on the wall at a bar that they both were at, but now that Burrell's gone, maybe Huff in his thinned down Pilates, more flexible body will be able to get that average above 240 for this year. So let's hope for that.
I'm just saying, as long as we can bounce quarters off of those abs, I feel like he's in a good spot.
Pat Burrell, since Pat Burrell's not playing for the Giants anymore, he just put his big San Francisco house up on the market. And so now that his house is up on the market, and I'm using the word house so loosely, it is absolutely like a love palace. It's like everything about this apartment is so completely designed like for him to seduce the ladies. And so
do tell. I do not know the details of said love palace.
Okay, so like every wall is made of glass, like like it's either like open or like he has these just huge windows that surround the entire house, and like bizarrely shaped modern furniture that looks like you can't sit on it, you kind of have to lounge.
Very clever.
And there's like there's a round bar in the middle of his like living room. I think there was a bar in the bedroom too, and the bedroom's like open and has this huge window that looks out over the city. It's actually a beautiful house, but when Pat Burrell lives in it alone, like the house goes on the market and suddenly the internet is blowing up with all of these stories of Pat Burrell being Pat
Burrell.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, well, if I bought that house, I would want a CSI crew to go through and make sure everything was okay.
I was going to say, if I bought that house, I would want to be Pat Burrell too, heck.
Come on. Tell people you're Pat Burrell.
It's like, I live in Pat Burrell's house. I may or may not be Pat Burrell reincarnated. I mean, no, let's face it, nobody can be Pat Burrell.
No.
Gone but not forgotten.
Yeah, and it's impressive too. In the amount of time that he had with the club, about a year and a half, he's made such a lasting impact. Like everybody, and maybe it's because we saw him so much when we were facing him when he was in Philly, but it's so interesting seeing the impact that local boy comes home, makes good, and also makes out with a lot of people. That story has really just kind of caught everybody though, and it's fun. I actually saw somebody post on Twitter that they were very upset about the Pat Burrell leaving the Giants, and we'll talk about this a little later, but Mark Kroon leaving the Giants. And they were like, your contributions will not be forgotten. I sat there and I went, one was with us for a year and a half, and the other was in Fresno for a season.
Yeah.
So, but it says a lot about how this team has really connected with a lot of its fans. Some of the storylines were so good that guys who were in AAA were almost better stories than some of the guys who were taking up bench space on the roster.
Yeah, Kroon was a good story, though. I mean, being in Japan for so long and being at the advanced age that he was, for in baseball terms,
right.
And being the active Twitter user he is, and he had a huge following in Japan as well. So, yeah, I mean, it was kind of like I followed him a lot, and I read his story, and I was hoping he'd get a crack. Sometime last year, I thought, especially September, I really did think he was going to get a call up to get a cup of coffee, but I guess the powers that be thought differently. So, but still, good story.
Yeah, and I would say it's nice hearing about all the storylines, but it is strange looking back on this someday and going, we are going to have really good stories about Pat Burrell, and then you look at guys who were with the team for much longer than that, and it's funny because they'll come up sometimes. We'll talk about them when we hit birthdays and stuff. I'm like, yeah, this guy was with us for 5 years, and we'll go, who?
Yeah. We're like, right.
Do you remember what happened when I mentioned Lance Niekro last week? I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, he came back as a knuckleballer for a year in the Braves minor league system. That was interesting. But yeah, now he's an assistant coach at a university there. So,
well, good for him. So now that we're done talking about Posey, but still talking about squats, Ryan Vogelsong has strained his lower back in the weight room doing the aforementioned squats. An MRI today actually revealed that there was a little bit of a lower back strain. He's being kept out 7 to 10 days as a precaution. Obviously, that's not a whole lot of time. So on the one hand, that sounds pretty favorable for his prognosis. But on the other hand, this is right at the beginning of spring training when guys are just beginning to get back into routines and conditioning. I don't know. What do we think? Is 7 to 10 days at the very beginning of spring training going to affect Vogelsong any significant way?
My concern would be that it's an injury that doesn't get treated well enough now and comes back later in the season as something much worse, like when Wilson strained his side and drank the Red Bull and ignored it, and then later on couldn't pitch because he didn't let it heal the first time. So I know that this is the beginning of conditioning and everything, and this is a really crucial time for them to be training. But my thinking is if he gets hurt now and doesn't deal with it,
it's a whole season of
it's
less
a whole
Vogelsong.
season.
Yeah. Can't argue there.
Yeah, strained muscles are a bitch. Oh, did I let one slip there?
Oh dear.
And it wasn't me.
They're a beer. No, the thing is that it is the beginning of spring training, like you said. So there is definitely concern that once he starts getting into full motion, full drills, doubles and all that stuff, that it's going to flare back up if he doesn't really let this fully heal. Hamstrings, backs, calves, those kinds of muscles, they can actually feel 100% in a matter of a week or two. But there's still those little micro tears in there. And until you start using them at full capacity or near full capacity, that's when they're going to flare back up again. So I speak from experience. I ripped 2 hamstrings off my bone at the knee, and I had to have surgery to get them reattached because I laid off of it for 3 weeks thinking that was enough. But hamstrings take 6 to 8 weeks to heal. So, I know this is back, but back's kind of important when you pitch. So, hopefully he takes it easy. He's got all the hydrotherapy and Miracle Cream and Clear and everything that Bonds will give him, and he's going to be just fine. So,
I don't know how I feel about that last part, but
anything to recover faster,
right,
basically.
Great. Now, most people who listen to the podcast know Vogelsong is one of my favorite guys, so I definitely would prefer to see successful Vogelsong start later in the season, maybe do extended spring training if it seems like he's not quite up to par, as opposed to seeing Vogelsong rush in, take a spot that we could theoretically have Surkamp cover for maybe a couple of weeks and end up screwing himself into the ground for the next season. I'd really rather he have a chance to show that last year wasn't a fluke, because it's one thing to really finally prove to everybody, hey, I've arrived. It's another thing to say, but I can keep doing it. And I feel like that if he doesn't get that chance, that's really just not fair to him and not fair for him to himself. So Ryan Vogelsong, just take a break for a while. It does sound like they are going to keep him out for a bit, so that's good. 7 to 10 days may not be enough, so it depends on what kind of strain. But it sounds like it was a pretty small one, and that they're doing it partly as a precaution. So we have to hope that the Giants trainers really know best on this one. Speaking of pitchers, everybody's favorite Yogi, Barry Zito, has come into camp with some new mechanics. Zito is crouching a little bit more now. He's actually getting closer to the ground. He's changed his mechanics a little bit. He's trying to use his legs to generate more movement on his pitches. He was talking about it to some of the writers who were at spring training and talked a lot about a sort of a tunnel, which is interesting because I've heard all kinds of interesting baseball metaphors and I've never heard a tunnel before. But the idea of his pitches coming out of this same angle, looking similar, sort of that same idea of giving a guy the same look on multiple pitches, which is one of the things that's made, like Romo very strong as a pitcher. But Zito, he's mainly said his main idea is to work on movement and to gain movement from the new pitching motion. And if that leads to more velocity, then so much the better. But I think it's safe to say that one of the big concerns with Zito in the last couple of years has always been velocity, that his fastball, once his fastball stops being much of a threat, then his off-speed pitches lose a lot of their power.
Is it wrong if I say that I think that Barry Zito's biggest contribution to baseball has been his socks? Is that overly dramatic of me?
I want to say yes, but no, it really isn't. No, it's I know lots of people who will comment on the Zito socks, which Kane also sported for a while. Surkamp had those when he came in, but everybody calls them the Zito socks. Even when Surkamp's wearing them, they say, "Oh, Surkamp's got the Zito socks today." So there is something to be said for being a leader in baseball fashion, I suppose.
I think that everyone needs to bring high socks back. I hate the long pants. High socks, that is classic baseball. I want everybody in high socks.
And do you also want the ball to be sort of that brown leather sphere? And
I could go back and forth on the ball being a brown leather sphere, but high socks, stirrups, and old school catcher's masks. I want everyone to look like they're playing in 8 Men Out.
It is interesting to see the evolution of baseball, attire. I remember being a kid and absolutely having the stirrups all the way up to almost my knees. And you could play banjo on those things. I mean, it was fantastic. And now,
baseball.
I'm still playing, and I do have the baggy pants that go all the way down to the pants. I don't have them hooked around the cleat and the back heel, by the way, like some players do, but I do have them all the way down. So no sock shows whatsoever, and no stirrups. I just have solid color socks underneath. So it's really interesting. But I do have to admit, the baggy pants, they're pretty comfortable. They're like pajamas. You're playing out in pajamas.
Pajamas are comfortable. I don't wear them to work. When I go to work, I get dressed like I'm going to work.
That's all right. It's nice to take your mind off of really tight pants if you can just go ahead and play in your pajamas. I kind of like it, but
I'm a fan of really tight pants.
I don't actually know. Most of the people that I know that pay really close attention to baseball players' pants usually prefer the tight ones, but maybe that's just from growing up in San Francisco. I don't know.
No, don't you like to? Yeah. Don't you like watching volleyball players in really baggy clothing? I mean, of course, it's better that way.
Why would I watch volleyball? Baseball's happening.
Volleyball is not an off-season sport. And come on, non-off-season sports just don't exist. So.
Sorry, I was referring to a sport that maybe I would occasionally watch that females play that don't really wear a whole lot of clothing. But that's another story. We won't talk about that right now.
And there are tigers in Indonesia, but that's not important right now.
Anything Zito can do to improve his 5.0 ERA is good with me. I don't care what it is.
My big problem with it is on Twitter at GG Giants was pointing out that he brought up an article from 2007 with Zito talking about his new and improved pitch motion, and a couple of things sounded kind of similar, and I'm like, well, 2007 Zito, 2012 Zito, everything seems to be moving in cycles here, which I guess is very yoga of him, but I feel like we've tread some of this ground before.
Yeah, we need 2002 Zito. That's what we need.
Well, you know. Well, I mean, if we're going to go back to 07, if we go back another 5 years, 07 is sort of the halfway point between now and then. So can we maybe hope that he'll be getting half as better? Half as better isn't English, but you get the idea.
No, you get the idea.
We can hope. So there'll be lots of meditation in the bullpen this year. And let's see. We do also have a bunch of non-roster invitees for spring training. This is one of my favorite parts. I obviously love always seeing the big guys come back into camp, but there's always that part of me that just really wants to know who the guys who are getting the shot, who are just going to be like, come on and play with the big boys. And I always love hearing about the guys who are coming in for non-roster invites, because I think that's awesome. That the fact that you can bring somebody in, not have to worry about finding room for him on the roster, but give him a chance to come in and do spring training with everybody who's going to be with the big club. And potentially, for some of them, I mean, this is the kind of showing that got Brandon Belt his first base job last year, or that really let a couple of guys show off how good they were. And so I'm always excited and curious who the next one's going to be, so to speak. Couple of good names on here. Heath Hembry is going to be ended the season in AA last year as a closer. He's going to be brought into the spring training camp off of the roster, along with pitchers Jake Dunning, Justin Fitzgerald, Austin Fleet, who was drafted very recently, Stephen Harold, and Andrew Cohn, I think it's Cohn, did really well in San Jose last year. Mitch Lively, Gene Machi, Seth Rosen, Sean Sanford, and Shane Lux. I'm actually really excited about this. Shane Lux is much like Mark Kroon. Both of them have been on Twitter were on Twitter most of last season. Lux is he's a really good guy. I remember he used to pitch with Houston back in the day, and I'm actually really excited to see him at least get some time with the big club. And I don't know that he's too likely to make the major league roster barring an injury, but Lux put in a lot of time and a lot of hard work as a starting pitcher in Fresno last year, so it's a good story. I'm kind of hoping that he at least gets to show off a little bit this year.
Yeah, maybe he's going to be the next Vogelsong. You never know.
That
Lightning will strike twice.
He's in an ice bath.
It's the next Vogelsong. So if we start by squatting and injuring ourselves in a weight room, then it bodes well for us. Well,
I think setting a record for the number of times the word squatting has been used in one podcast.
That's we're just trying to squat on that record. So, left-handed pitchers, we've got David Kwiatkowski, Wilman Rodriguez, Matt Yorkin, and Brian Burris has been called into spring training camp as a non-roster invite. Interestingly, in the Brian Burris people with alliterative initials area, Boof Bonzer has not been called into spring training that I'm aware of, which I think is interesting because it was such a big deal when Boof came back, and a lot of us were talking about him potentially being the next Vogelsong. We're all going to be saying this for all season. Who is the next Vogelsong? But Boof Bonzer was one of the guys we talked about, and now it doesn't look like he's actually going to be coming into spring training at all. Let's see. We've also got a couple of catchers coming in. Tommy Joseph, Andrew Susak, and Jackson Williams, all very talented catchers. Jackson Williams more so as a defense. Tommy Joseph really destroyed as a hitter last year in the minors. Andrew Susak, drafted recently, did a great job. So that brings us up to how many catchers are in this camp now? Is that 7?
I'm getting 7.
Posey, Whiteside, Stewart, Sanchez, Joseph, Susak, and Williams. That is a lot of catchers. So I guess if you're going to have pitchers and catchers report, given the number of pitchers we have, it makes sense that you have to bring in a lot of catchers, I suppose. But that seems pretty impressive. That looks like we have, for the record, looks like we have lost Chad. So Erin and I are going to carry on here, not wondering why he's not talking for 5 minutes here.
This is going to be dire.
This is going to be dangerous. I don't know. What do you think though? I mean, that's 7 catchers. You're looking at a couple of guys who started last year, and I think we can safely say Posey's got the starting position. But this is something we talked about a little bit last week about who takes that backup position.
Well, I think the backup position is really important and something that maybe the Giants weren't really prepared for. I mean, we weren't prepared for what happens when we don't have Posey all season, and we really suffered last year because of it. I mean, Whiteside, I like the guy. I like his hair. I think he's not a bad pitcher, but he doesn't have the command of the team the way that Posey does. And so I think now we're kind of veering towards overcompensating for that, like getting caught in a position where we don't have a strong a strong catcher is not a good position to be in. And I think inviting 7 catchers to spring training is the Giants attempting to like overcompensate and prevent that from happening again. We're not trying to get caught with our masks down twice.
Yeah, the lack of depth on catcher it really stung a lot last year. And I mean, we had a couple of guys like Jackson Williams sitting in the minors who had come up and played with us during spring training. But Jackson Williams really, if you thought that Chris Stewart had some woes offensively, Jackson Williams takes those woes and just makes them looks like Mike Piazza. Jackson Williams is not a very strong offensive catcher, although I'm hoping to see some improvement this year. But it's some of the alternatives that we had, either they were really green. Tommy Joseph was in, I want to say, San Jose or Richmond last year, maybe even lower, Augusta. He's very talented offensively, but you're not bringing him up against major league catching or pitching. And so it was sort of like our options were left pretty much Chris Stewart, Eli Whiteside, and Hector Sanchez. And we went through all of those, and none of them really quite clicked. So it was, I don't know. I'm really hoping that we at least get to see kind of what our next up and comers in the catching area are out of it. Because boy, that's a lot of catchers.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at Jackson Williams, really green last year, but he had all of last season to hone himself a little bit. So I'm actually really excited to see what he brings to the plate.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that he's so good defensively, really, you hope that there's going to be enough something there to at least, to feel like if there is an emergency, we can bring up a good defensive catcher who's not going to make himself look completely ridiculous. We can hope for that. Oh, and I think we've got Chad back.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. I am Skyping over 3G. What'd I miss?
We talked a lot about catchers because we've got 7 of them. And along those veins, I want to talk about the fact that we have several infielders and outfielders coming up, but there's 3 that I really want to focus on. We've got Nick Noonan and Joe Panik coming up as in the infield, and we've got Gary Brown in the outfield who's going to be coming in. All 3 of them are going to be in as non-roster invites, so they're not on the 40-man. But Nick Noonan has he's sort of made this interesting journey back and forth from prospect to non-prospect to prospect again. Joe Panik, of course, had a really nice showing at Salem Kaiser in short season A last year, and Gary Brown just destroyed high A all over the place. And honestly, it was a lot of fun to watch in the All-Star Futures game, covering center field really well. So, what do we think about these 3 prospects coming in and doing spring training with the big boys, Noonan, Panik, and Brown?
I'm really excited about Brown. I really do want to see how he's going to hold his own. I mean, granted, he's going to be playing against a lot of other, minor league players during spring training. But, I mean, every level so far he seemed to really excel at. So I think he's going to give the Giants something to think about. I mean, certainly not to make the team out of spring training. I mean, no one expects that. But, it could be one of those I don't think he's going to be ready this year. He still has only played Class A and Arizona Fall League, but I do think that they'll give him some pause for thought maybe later in the year if, let's say, one of our outfielders or 2 goes down with an injury, to bring him up for a little seasoning. Obviously, you don't want to bring up a guy too soon, but again, I think if he has a strong spring training, it's going to be a possibility.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about Nick Noonan, just because he's a guy that has just sort of come and gone out of the Giants fan discussions on and off all through the years. Noonan generally tends to play, as far as infield, he's usually sort of a middle infielder, And I think it's interesting that Noonan and Panic are both going to be coming in as they're both middle infielders by trade. And that's definitely something where, while we have a lot of strength there, at the moment we really lack almost any depth. And so I'm really curious to see if either of these guys makes a good enough showing, not to make the big club, especially in Panic's case. He's done short season A. There is no way that he makes the big club out of that. But in Noonan's case, to at least see, if he moves up, stays up in Fresno, if he starts starting more, if we see more of him, I guess that's what I'm curious about, because Noonan has been talked about for so long, and because, to be honest, our shortstop options right now they're pretty limited beyond Crawford.
They're exceptionally limited.
It's Crawford, Fontenot, Terrio, and Terrio's really more of a second baseman. I mean,
I'm not really counting him.
That's fair. So that basically leaves us with those two and Emmanuel Burris. And that's pretty much what we're looking at in the shortstop area at the moment.
I just like saying Noonan.
Yeah, we need some better names in this club. Like, seriously, we need some good solid baseball names. And then we just kind of need some like fun ones every once in a while. Like the A's have a guy named Coco Crisp. Are you kidding me? We need to step up our game as a club and get some guys with some fun names in here.
So can we start like calling some of the guys, like if Zito continues his pitching motion, can we call him like Bent Knee Zito? Or no, that's no good.
That's stupid.
Well, I'm thinking of Mordecai Three Finger Brown. I mean, these, names like these are the ones. Old Hoss Radburn. These are the guys that I want to. Well, maybe that's just my my romantic missing of late 1800s baseball nicknames. But I can see how most of that wouldn't fly nowadays. It was bad enough. Like, if everybody remembers Randy Johnson was the big unit, you know how many jokes that inspired by the time he was
unit.
I
do not know what you refer to.
We censor ourselves on this show. That doesn't mean that we're going to stop talking about things.
I just would like to throw it out there. It's totally unfair that you get to be all nostalgic for late 1800s baseball nicknames, but I can't rally the cry for high socks and stirrups again, because that is romantic baseball.
All right, that's it. Well, if you're going to do that, I'm just saying you also have to try and get them to put the bolo ties back around the collars.
I support that.
All right. Well, then I can work with that, because we're going way back. We need the squared-off military-type caps with the circular stripes around the outside.
We might be getting a little...
And no numbers.
Absolutely no numbers. Christy Mathewson got retired with an NY. We're keeping it that way with an SF from here out.
All right. No new numbers.
So we've got 5 birthdays this week that I'm going to kind of zip over here. Dave Trevecki was born on Valentine's Day. And so when Valentine's Day passed, that was another year to celebrate the life of Dave Trevecki. Always one of those really good feel-good stories as a Giant, other than, well, I guess now you look back at it and you say it's a feel-good story. At the time, it's really not something you would have felt good about until the game that he came back. But Dave Trevecki has always been one of those really inspiring figures to Giants fans who have heard his story, and especially Giants fans who were around to watch any of those games that he played after coming back from some really difficult bouts with cancer.
Yeah, he really was an amazing man. I remember watching the Expos game in which he was pitching, and that the ball was flailing way off to the left, but obviously on TV you couldn't hear the snap, but apparently everybody on the field, Will Clark was the first person to him. They could all hear the arm snap, and to see him come back a little while later against the Reds back in Candlestick, I was listening to that game on KMBR. I remember it's one of those indelible moments that you just remember. I was actually cleaning the house. My mom told me I needed dust and vacuum, so I was going around the house and cleaning, but listening to that game, and what a remarkable performance he had that day, to see him come back. Granted, it didn't last that long because of the reoccurrence and the weakness in the bone, but man, he's an amazing person and inspiration.
Yeah, and still is too. You hear a lot about Dave Trevecki. Just he speaks a lot. He takes his story around, and he's one of those guys that, if you know Giants culture, really Dave Trevecki is a guy that it's impossible not to have a lot of respect for. He's such a good guy. He's been through a lot, and he's really come out of it in many ways for the better, which is just, it's a really inspiring kind of thing. In the birthday category, we've also got on the 15th, Nate Shearholtz had a birthday. Right before spring training, so that's nice. I had a chance to celebrate before he had to pack his things up and head out to Arizona. We've also got, just to zip through these, on the 17th, we have Cody Ransom, which is always an interesting story. On the 18th, Sean Estes. And today is actually a good time to wish a happy birthday to one Mr. Chris Stewart, who was in fact born on the 19th. So we've got a couple of interesting birthdays this week. Shearholtz, Ransom, Estes, Stewart. Part of me really wants to tackle Cody Ransom as a story, but I'd rather mention I think it's kind of neat that Stewart gets to celebrate his birthday with these guys. I think that he really got to see a major, he really took advantage of getting an opportunity last year. Stewart really ended up being an everyday catcher for us by the end of the season in a lot of ways, and he's a guy that, even though I don't see him taking a major role this year, I still stand by the fact I think he'll be the backup for the season, and I'm pretty inspired by that. So I think it's kind of nice that he got to celebrate his birthday around the rest of the team that he spent so much time kind of re-showcasing himself with last year.
Definitely.
So. All right, so that's that for birthdays. People were born during this week. Some of them were Giants. So before we jump into just kind of hitting a couple of retirements and our usual closing segments, Chad, I wanted to ask you about this article that you put up on the site. You made a very incendiary statement here, one that undoubtedly set many pens to paper, and by that I mean fingers to Twitters in their mother's basements. But Romo is better than Wilson. You laid it out right there, plain as day for everybody to see. So, I must ask that you explain yourself.
I like Brian Wilson. I really do. Let me just lay that out.
You're really weakening your position here by starting by that.
I know. I'm kissing up. It's a disclaimer, exactly.
Disclaimer, I don't dislike Brian Wilson.
I pointed out in the article that Romo has never been a closer. He has 3 saves in his entire career. Wilson can get that in 3 nights. So I can't speak to the mental makeup of Sergio Romo. I know a lot of pitchers, even though he's a setup guy, there still is a different mentality that is required to be the closer. If you blow a hold in the 8th inning, the management's going to know, but the fans aren't going to notice as much as, let's say, Brian Wilson blowing a save in the 9th. There definitely is a mental aspect to that. If you remove that, because we can't really speak to that because Romo hasn't been put in that situation too many times, just statistically speaking, and as far as how many times the ball misses the bat for Romo, Romo is a better pitcher. We all know that Wilson gets on the mound, and it can be an adventure almost every night that he goes out there. And not because he gets hit really hard, but because he walks too many guys. I mean, that's really the I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but his whip is way higher than Romo. He walks 1 out of 10 batter. Romo's is about 1 out of 20. You go down the list of all the stats, and Romo dominates in every single category. The other thing that also concerns me is Wilson relies really on his fastball. I know he relied a lot on his cutter more last year than in the previous 3 years. If you look at the pitch counts, you'll see that his cutter was made up more of his pitch selection than in previous years. But his straight fastball has lost about 1 mile to 2 miles per hour over the last couple of years. So that's a bit of a concern as well. Romo relies almost exclusively on his slider, which is a thing of beauty. He pitches that about 85% of the time. It's only 84, 85 miles an hour, but it befuddles players. And his strikeout to walk ratio is obscene compared to Wilson's. Romo actually has a slightly higher strikeout per 9, but because of the walks issue, he just doesn't put guys on base. And of course, he had that ridiculous streak last year. What was it, 33 innings, if I'm right?
He pitched a perfect game and then change of just retiring guys in order. Is that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 30, 33. I can't. It was in that range, but it was more than one full game. Granted, it was broken up into however many appearances, but I don't care. This is Major League Baseball. You go out there and you retire 30-something straight players. That's impressive. His whip was .7 something last year. His ERA was microscopic. I just think that I'm not saying that Romo should be anointed the closer. That's not what I'm saying at all. All I'm saying is that if Wilson is going to continue to struggle like he did at the end of last year with his injury, granted he did have an injury, and hopefully he's healthy starting the season this year. I know me as a Giants fan, I'm going to have a short fuse when it comes to Wilson going out there and walking 2 guys or 3 guys and then getting out of a jam.
Giants baseball.
I mean,
Torture Cast.
I know this is Torture Cast, and I know that's kind of, the moniker, and I know Wilson has contributed a lot to that, name, but at the same time, if a guy can go out there and strike out 2 guys and get them up, 3 up, 3 down, and pitch 30 consecutive scoreless perfect innings, I think I'm going to take him. So it was just not an argument for him taking over the closer position. It was just an argument that it was smart and shrewd by Giants management to obviously sign him to extend him for several years, as well as Affeldt and Lopez, because I think they need an insurance policy for Brian Wilson, because it's undetermined on how this injury, that granted it was at the end of last year, is going to affect him now. I mean, hopefully he's not going to become another Jonathan Broxton or something like that. But sometimes closers, aside from
say that all right, sorry.
Aside from Rivera and a few other, Lee Smith and those guys, there are quite a few closers, if you look at the history of the league last 20 years, that have an incredible 2 or 3 seasons and become household names and then disappear. And so I'm really hoping that Wilson's not one of those guys, because I really like him, and I hope he sticks around, and I hope he has a resurgence of his 2009, 2010 years.
I agree completely. In the last season, coming off the World Series win, I feel like Brian Wilson, to a certain extent, and I love Brian Wilson. You guys can't see me, but I have a Brian Wilson shirt. I love Brian Wilson. Last season, he made me nervous. I think that he kind of started to play more and more into the persona. He became the beard. And he kind of started playing up. He was so worried about his average and his stats that he was walking anybody that he wasn't 100% sure he could strike out. And we ended up in a lot of situations that didn't need to be there. He ended up getting a couple of saves that were saves because he gave up runs and then managed to shut the last guy down.
Yeah, well, and he's one of those guys that if you bring him into a game 3-0, you're probably going to win 3-2. And it's just that there are some guys that just have that knack for, I'm going to allow pretty much whatever I can in, but it's not going to matter. I'm going to get the save. And there is something to be said for that in the area of consistency. But on the other hand, the nail biting, it doesn't make you look impressive. It's going to kill the rest of your stat line from a stats perspective, but it also people they have the reputation of you as clutch one year, but last year I feel like Wilson as clutch wasn't the same. It was, he obviously he still had that reputation. There was still that perception of Wilson it was the big deal, and he came in, everybody went like, yeah, we're going to get this. But I didn't have that same conviction in it last year that I did the year before, where it was like, all right, here comes Wilson. There's probably an 86% chance that we're going to win right now.
I feel more comfortable with Romo on the mound. I said it last season, I will say it again. I mean, I don't, and I agree with Chad, I'm not advocating for Romo becoming the closer.
And welcome back to the Torture Cast. Pardon the interruption, folks. We had a bit of a technical error, and by that I mean my computer decided to cease recording the show in the middle of the show. Clearly, I am completely lost without our totem spirit animal, which I assume is either a very angry seal or a day-drinking, mediocre golfing panda bear.
I was thinking about that. I thought we were Dillsless or Willie-less, and I thought Willie-less is probably not a very good less to be. So I'm going with Dillsless.
Dillsless just makes me think that I'm looking. No, I was going to say it makes me think I'm looking for pickles, but that really doesn't.
That didn't make it better, did it?
That really didn't.
That doesn't make it a whole lot better.
Oh boy. So moving on, we're gonna jump on to another topic right about now. So let's go ahead and let's get right into our new favorite guy. We're getting a little. We're getting into the beginning of the season here, and so we've got new favorite guys galore. Personally, I got to pick Shane Lux. Same reason that I talked about before. Shane Lux is really it's a nice story. You know, he's a guy who's worked really hard. I don't honestly think that he's a guy that's, especially with our rotation, he's not a guy that's going to make the big league roster, especially not out of camp. But knowing that he's in Fresno is it's reassuring to have a little bit of depth, and it's just nice that he's getting an invite to spring training. I think that's awesome that he's been in the league for a while. He's spent a lot of time in the minors, and it's like, hey, come on and train with the big kids for a little while. And, he's been around. He just had a beautiful daughter just last year, and it's kind of nice for him to be able to say, hey, let's bring her to a game. And even if it's a spring training game, I'm going to be out there with the rest of the Giants in my Giants uniform, and she'll have been there. And that's got to be a great feeling. So who else has a favorite guy? That can't be our only favorite guy. It's spring training.
I have a favorite guy.
All right, Erin, go for it.
Okay, so my favorite guy this week is not new, but he's my new old favorite guy. I'm, of course, talking about Buster Posey. I know we've done a lot on Posey, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. We need him. We need Buster. We need him in the dugout. We need him behind the plate. Buster is the glue that holds our team together. He's what was missing last season, and I'm really, really, really excited to have Buster back. I know I'm getting a little prematurely excited because we haven't seen how the rehab took to how his ankle took to the rehab, and how well he's going to be playing and what kind of longevity he's going to have this season. But I'm just so excited to see him in that Giants uniform. Those
are some pretty inspiring photos with the soft focus that came out of.
Posey pictures are that is some Ansel Adams crap here, ladies and gentlemen. This is truly inspiring American art.
I just see him turning to the camera and just being like, I'm Buster Posey, and I'm going to save your season.
And he is. And he is.
All right, Chad, who you got?
All right, going non-baseball.
Yes.
I'm going Linsanity. Super Nintendo. Lincredible. Just Lin, baby.
Yes, that's you're lucky right, that I'm planning to write a whole post about bandwagon fans, because otherwise I would call you that right now, but it's such a good word. It's so mean.
I know, so mean. I just you rarely hear a story about a guy coming almost literally from nowhere. A lot of people were going, he's kind of like Tim Tebow, and it's like, no, he's not at all. What the hell are you talking about? Tim Tebow was highly recruited out of high school. He was a Heisman Trophy winner. He was a first-round draft pick in the NFL. His expectations were over the moon.
Well, and half of his success came from the defense on his team, not so much from his own work.
Very true.
Yeah. I admit I never got into the Tebow Mania thing, but I have gotten into the Linsanity thing more than a little bit. So
it really is incredible to see this guy. He went to Palo Alto High, and he couldn't get a sniff with Cal or Stanford or any of his. They invited him to walk on, and he was like, "Well, I don't really want to do that." So he goes and plays for an Ivy League school. He goes undrafted. He ends up having some time with the Warriors and the Rockets and the Mavericks and all that, and they all let him go. And he ends up showing up with the Knicks, and he was on the bench, and apparently the Knicks were about to let him go as well until finally some of those injuries occurred. And they, why don't you go play a full game at point guard? And he blows up. And then he does it the next game, and the next game, and the next game. And, now I know it's only been 8 games, and he could totally fall off the table, and everybody, I think, recognizes that. But I can't remember in my lifetime someone literally coming from nowhere. It's really incredible. Even if he doesn't last the rest of this season at this level, and I don't think anyone can expect that he will, especially with Carmelo coming back and these other guys coming back. They need, they're going to share the stats a little bit more. But even if this guy comes through and plays 30 minutes a game, scores 10 points and dishes 5, that's great. Considering the guy was getting 2 minutes a game and was basically out of the league, I just think it's incredible. And I love the momentum behind it. I love that the fans catching on. A little sick of the Linsanity names and all that. It's only been 2 weeks, but it works. It works, right? So, but anyway, I just think that this guy really has a good head on his shoulders, and he's an inspiration to a lot of people.
I'm going to be honest. When I started reading about Lynn's sanity, I thought everyone was talking about Lindsay Lohan. And I was like, what did she do this time? Like, I am so...
the term is reusable. Who knew?
So far removed from basketball. I had no idea. And I was like, oh, what did she do this time?
Oh, that rascal. I mean, for me, of course, it was big hearing about Jeremy Lin because I'm half Asian American. I've always kind of identified as Asian American, and you really didn't see a lot of guys that were Asian American in professional sports, especially in basketball, which tends to be dominated very much. It's very much a physical game. It's dominated by guys who are very tall, who tend to develop a lot of muscle, and we happened to get one lucky shot in there in Yao Ming, and he was from mainland China. And so it was kind of we were kind of like, all right,
7+ feet tall. So
yeah, well,
hard.
when you've got a lot more population to choose from, it's more likely you're going to find one of those. But it's really significant too, just to have that figure, and I think that's part of the reason it's gotten so big. Especially you saw when he was a Warrior, even though he didn't get a lot of time, didn't do a lot. Every time he touched the ball, the crowd would go nuts, and the tickets would sell out, and it was a shame because it had so much more to do with him being a symbol than it had to do with him being a player. And things have changed now. He is still a symbol. There's a lot about him that it's like, well, look, major Asian American player, most points in his first 5 starts since the NBA-ABA merger. But there's also, it's because he's also showing that he's good. And he's showing the talent that got him into the NBA in the first place. And seeing that and coupling it with his being the symbol of that, like, one of the first major Asian American players to hit the NBA, that's when you start feeling like, okay, this is really a thing now. And so there's something about it that I still feel like it's all going to like collapse in a second, and people will go back to that sort of like, no major Asian Americans in professional sports in most play, here and there, some Brian Ching and playing soccer, but it's, I don't know, there's something that's very inspiring about seeing this plastered everywhere, and I'm really excited for someday this future that I see of people being able to be recognized as players regardless of their color for their talents alone. You can't see it, but I'm tilting my head and looking into the future right now.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, obviously there were some controversial remarks by, who was it, Mayweather, I think?
Floyd Mayweather was one of probably several who have no idea how to properly talk about these sort of things.
Yeah,
possibly including us.
Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Yeah, I won't touch that with a 10-foot pole. But anyway, regardless of race, color, and all that stuff like that, he is. It doesn't matter. You look at the whole spectrum, literally, of colors of basketball players that have come across the line in the last 30 years, and he's unique in that perspective. That he did come from nowhere, and boom, he's suddenly averaging 25 points a game. And really inspiring a lot of people. So I think that in itself is the story, All
right, so I'm gonna, before we move on to our guys that we dislike, while we're still in a good mood about people, I'm gonna go ahead and make a quick honorable mention here for Mark Kroon. Announced his retirement today after 21 years of baseball. Like we said, really good story, connected very well with the fans, made his appearance on the franchise show and won a lot of people over just by being very, very earnest, good baseball player, good father, good closer, very heartfelt in the way that he communicated, very willing to speak to the fans, great guy. I'm honestly really curious to see what he's going to do next from a baseball standpoint, and also I'm excited. He still seems to be sticking around on Twitter, and he's always had a lot of good things to say. So I'm very at once both a little sad that we won't be seeing Kroon this year, but at the same time, I'm very appreciative of the amount of time he's spent in the sport and what it seems like he's really gotten out of the experience. All right, so let's dish some hate. Let's get angry. All right, I'm gonna jump right in here. After being really excited about Mark Kroon, I'm gonna go ahead and say that I dislike Yoenis Cespedes. He's a Cuban phenom. He's extremely talented, very, very strong, excellent hitter, and he is now an Oakland Athletic. And I can't I don't even. He actually posted on his Twitter account apparently, and I don't know that this account is verified yet. I don't know that we actually can say for sure that it is in fact him posting, but he essentially said that he picked the Oakland A's over the Miami Marlins because he liked the uniforms and the white shoes better.
Okay, are you kidding?
I wish. I'm not. I mean, there's got to be other reasons, but that was the one that I saw online, and I didn't even know what to say to that. I mean,
I did hear, not from his Twitter account, but from other accounts, that number one, he really respects Billy Beane and he likes the system. And I don't know if it's because he just saw Moneyball and he's like, I want to play for that guy.
He's all hyped up on Moneyball.
Exactly.
He's like, I want to play for Brad Pitt, guys. I'm going to write all my family back home and tell them I am playing for Brad Pitt.
That guy's good looking. I want to play for him. Or the other one I heard was that because he is Cuban, he didn't want to play for Miami, who, obviously they were heavily recruiting him, if you will, because of the Cuban influence there. He wanted to get away from that. So he figured Oakland was far enough away, and he would.
That's accurate.
That is pretty far.
That.
See, if that, I can understand that as much better of a reason. And in fairness, the green and white of the A's is still better than what they're sporting in Miami right now this year. Their colors, their uniform, their logo, their hat, everything is I equate them to the Houston Astros from the mid '80s. Is horrible. You mean that rainbow striped Nolan Ryan pitches, and you're not sure if it's a pitcher or a TV set on the blink? Yeah. Those are some pretty interesting.
The rainbow, but it wasn't a rainbow. It was alternating stripes of yellow, orange, light orange, darker orange, and brown or something. I don't know.
Because Rockets are on fire.
It's a hot mess. I would like to throw it out there that Toronto has gone back to the vintage uniforms this season, and I think that is an excellent call. They are going back to the old logo, and I think that is a brilliant choice. I'm excited.
Oh, that should be fun. This isn't not as an alternate jersey, but as their main jersey this year.
As their main jersey.
Oh, that's gonna be fun. Okay, I can get behind that.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I like that. Good.
All right.
I'm obviously in it for the fashion, so.
Right. Clearly, Rogers still weirds me out because it's the only stadium I've seen where the infield is also grass. And that just always, I'm like,
I know.
Wait, but there's more grass there, and then grass there, and then they're standing on grass. I don't know how you slide on that, and it just weirds me out. I'm actually curious how you slide on that. I'm going to have to watch more Jays games just to try and figure out how you slide into second when it's grass on the field or turf. So I got to toss it to Erin. Who are you hating on right now?
Oh, okay. Here's who I hate right now. People who are watching hockey. Now, okay, I hate people who are watching hockey. Now, this is somewhat Bay Area specific because we are having one of the nicest winters in the history of the Bay Area right now. I've been wearing shorts in San Francisco. So, hockey is a cold weather sport, for starters. I understand when you need to watch hockey and you live in Detroit. That makes sense to me. I don't understand why you need to watch hockey when you live in the Bay Area. Our closest team is San Jose, and it's sunny there, guys. We're faking it, and we're not kidding anybody. So there's that. But not only that, hockey is what you do in the off season for baseball. Hockey is what you do when you can't get behind football and you realize that basketball's not that great, and you're just trying to numb the pain until baseball comes back. Some people drink, some people watch hockey. But ladies and gentlemen, baseball is back. Why are you wasting your time?
It's just funny because I imagine that you really can't have any good thoughts for Phoenix Coyotes fans at that point. It's you're in Phoenix and it's hockey.
Do not get me started. It's hockey in Arizona. Y'all live in the desert. Let's get real here.
It's just as opposite as Jamaican bobsledding. It just doesn't make any sense.
But it's not as inspiring as the guy who's saying, Sanka, you dead man. It's more well, it's really hot out there, eh?
Yeah, you get the Giants losing in the playoffs, and I pretty much go into my little cocoon and coma for about a month, and then I consider myself a Sharks fan, and yet every year they're very good. They make the playoffs the last couple of years. They make the conference finals, and they lose, and everybody's throwing up and. All my friends on Twitter and Facebook and everything, my life is over. I can't believe they were so close. And I kind of get depressed for about 10 seconds and I move on. So I realize I'm not really that much of a Sharks fan. So. Anyway, hockey, yes, not so much.
All right. Well, Chad, in that case, who do you hate?
I hate the concept of moving, the act of moving, the physical depravity that it brings upon your body. I'm sorry. I'm moving right now, and it is horrible. I have not done this for about 5 years. Since then, I've had a couple of kids, and we've acquired about 3 times as much stuff as we owned before that. And I want to shoot everything and everyone. So, no Eli Manning this week. Just moving in general.
Boy, it took something pretty impressive to finally get you off of that Eli Manning hate kick.
I couldn't ride that all year, so
I would have defended him. I would have stood up.
I'm excited for baseball season.
You would have stood up for Eli as compared to.
Stood up for Eli.
I kind of want to hear this, but I feel like we're getting low on time here.
Yeah,
that's not right. It's not right. No, well, I'm sorry.
All right, well, Chad, I'm gonna turn this around because we've talked a lot of negativity just now, and I know that you're still probably sore from dealing with multiple loads of U-Hauls. But I want to get some optimism from you. Go ahead and lay it on me. Why are we going to win it all next year, or this year? We can finally say this year, guys. It's great.
Yeah.
So why are we going to win it all, Chad? Why are we going to win it all? I want to hear what you've got to bring to the table.
We're going to win it all because Buster Posey's back. That's it in a nutshell. We missed it by 4 games last year. 8 games behind the Diamondbacks, but 4 games behind the Cardinals for the wild card. And of course, they were the ones who actually won the World Series this year. So I really do think that that's going to make the difference. Him in place of Eli Whiteside or Chris Stewart, that's 4 games right there. No problem.
All right.
I have nothing to add.
And Erin agrees.
I have
Erin
nothing
agrees.
to add.
So again, we are going to win because Buster Posey is why. All right.
Sorry, I should have, considered some crazy astronomical alignment of stars or planets to allow you to choose Buster Posey. I stole your thunder there. Sorry about that.
We knew that's where I was going. This has been I've been doing the Buster cast all day.
That's right. Buster has.
But Buster's not in the cast anymore, and that's what's amazing.
And that's why we're gonna win it all.
Oh, well done.
All right, man. Last episode, you had a crazy, very eccentric reason. Can you top that this week?
Oh boy, it's gonna be tough. So in the news recently, it was announced that the Women's Professional Soccer League, the WPS, has ceased operations for the season due to various obligations, including a legal battle with the guy who made the Magic Jack of all things, which that still weirds me out. But I do actually watch women's soccer on occasion, and. So I was a little bit saddened by this news, but then I thought about it and I considered, well, let's see.
I'd rather move.
Wow. Now you're dishing out the hate. But so I considered, okay, so if women's pro soccer isn't going to be playing this year, well, what does that leave all the people who are going to be watching it? I mean, that means that's time that they obviously want to devote to sports. And so if they're going to devote it to sports, well, you could devote it to basketball, but that's indoors. And that's really not the same as the soccer experience. And you could devote it to hockey, which moves about as quickly, but that's indoors and cold. And the closest to that experience you're going to get is watching people play in Rochester, New York. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing, but not ignoring that. That leaves outdoor sports. And with football done, that pretty much is going to leave you with golf or baseball. And
Golf's a sport, it's a hobby.
Oh boy, we really need to get you on the podcast at the same time as Willie, and then we're just going to leave the two of you in a room and just duck out and see who's still. You'll both be dead and alive at the same time. It'll be great. So obviously, if more people begin flocking to baseball who appreciate women's sports, many of them may in fact be women. And so I think it's safe to say that the outpouring of support that we'd receive, these fans coming to our park and seeing Buster Posey for the first time, I rest my case. I think we can safely say that that's going to be a big enough deal that the Giants are going to feel an extra surge of support this year because nobody catches the ladies' attention like Pat Burrell, but he's gone. So nobody catches the ladies' attention like Buster Posey. And so because Buster Posey is so good looking, that is why we are going to win it all.
Buster Cast.
The Buster Cast. Not as good as last week, but I can't. I'm too excited for spring training. I'm not gonna lie. It's good. It's gonna be a good season, guys. We've got Posey back. We got a couple of interesting signings. I'm really curious to see Pagan and Cabrera get their shot. I really want to see Lux get out there and get his chance. And that's. I'm excited. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I'm excited. This is gonna be a fun season, and I'm really excited that we're gonna be meeting up and talking all through it because I think we're gonna have a lot of really interesting things to talk about.
Yeah, we're gonna have a big old Torture Cast road trip, and we're gonna go up to a game to AT&T Park, and we're gonna have some fun. So I'm really looking forward to this season. Can't wait.
All right. Well, that's gonna be it for us for this week. Thank you to Chad for coming in after some hard U-Haul work, and thank you to Erin for being our first and/or second guest ever on the Torture Cast.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a lot of fun. For those of you that are looking to catch us, you can always catch us on Twitter at TortureCast. You can also catch us on Facebook. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Podomatic, the site that hosts us. You can send us email at mail@torturecast.com, or you can find us individually. You can find Chad at ChadK21. I'm at Fried Duck. Our spirit animal is at Willie Dills. And if you want to catch Erin, you can catch her at EXRin. I haven't figured out a good way to pronounce that yet. How do you usually say it?
I would say it as Erin, but that doesn't make sense. So Exrin works, I guess. I don't know.
That's at EXRin if you want to catch Erin. So thank you guys for listening. We are getting set to roll on into a brand new season of the San Francisco Giants, and right alongside you the whole way will be the Torture Cast. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week. Boom!
A big thank you to everybody for listening to the Torture Cast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Follow us on Twitter at TortureCast. You can also like us on Facebook or check out our blog at torturecast.com. I also want to say thank you to Ashcon and Bailey for letting us use their song Feeling Like a Giant for our intro. For Ben Lee and Chad King, my name is Willie Dills saying, we'll see you next time.